So here is QLab. It's a pretty simple interface, but it can do a lot of stuff. QLab in and of itself, by default, has a set of tools on the top bar that you can just click a tool and it'll add it to your queue list. The queue list itself is linear, but it does not require you to label things in a linear fashion. So here I have Q5 followed by Q.05. So you can label things whatever you want in QLab, which is very helpful. It's also problematic because while we are constantly building and changing things, as we get through a tech rehearsal or a series of tech rehearsals, what once came before a file is now after a different file, and things get rerouted in different places. Now, QLab does a pretty good job of keeping track of when you move a file forward or backward in the sequence, and being able to continue to reference it, and also recognizing if you've changed the name of a file, any subsequent fades or anything that refer back to it, acknowledge that change in the file name. Now with our audio file, I can set default levels, which, and I can set all silent levels, which turns everything silent. Command Z is still undo. Setting default levels puts everything back to its default level. That doesn't mean that you're changing what the default is. It's just changing for this queue, put everything back what you've programmed to be the default level. We'll get there when we talk about preferences. But in general, the way audio works in QLab is we have a master controller. So we control all of our outputs from here. And you can click and drag, or you can put in a specific number. And because it's audio, audio works in the negatives. 0 is 0 change. Negative brings it below that volume. So typically we don't want to add volume to audio files or to audio playback, because when we add sound, it adds noise. What we do in audio systems is we amplify what's already there. All right, so most sound systems, we have everything as much as possible set at 0. All of our gain stages, all of our volume stages set at 0. So our playback device, our channels in our board, our outputs and our amplifiers, everything as much as possible is set at 0 change, so that it doesn't take away sound, it doesn't turn up the sound. Every time we turn up the sound, we're adding noise. All right, so that's why we typically work in the negatives. So we're working at 0 is hopefully our maximum volume. Can we add more? Yes, we can. But we start to get this red bar, which is clipping. Red is clipping. Whenever we push our audio system, any stage of our audio system louder than it should be, it starts to clip, which is what gets that scratchy, ugly sound that you often hear when you've got your headphones turned up too loud, or you've got your whatever your output that you're sending to your car stereo is turned up too loud. It starts to get all scratchy and ugly. That's clipping. So we work in the negatives. I want to show you a fun little thing. So here we have a very familiar image, because we all saw Ernest. We have this lovely garden fleur-de-lis path. Now, what color are you guys seeing as the output of this image?
White.
White.
Kind of like a, yeah, white with a little bit, like a bluish white.
Bluish white? Yeah. All right. This is where mapping two projectors to the same target at the same time can give you some options to create some cool stuff. Now, we remember with our lighting concepts, yellow and blue on a surface make white. Cyan and red on a surface make white, etc. We know our color theory. This is actually a red image and a cyan image at the same time. So that by using this texture from two separate projectors, so one of them is showing me the same image with a red overlay, the other is that image with a cyan overlay, our result on our wall looks white, But as we move forward, we get that discrepancy, and it gets real funky. It gets really interesting. We can get some interesting colors and textures on our performers if we're lighting performers with our projection that disappears when it gets to our target, when it gets to our background. So here, looks boring and normal, move forward, all of a sudden they're full of color. So really cool techniques that we can play with that we use in McCandless lighting can have a wonderful effect both on the background once we interrupt that image, so you can see that there's a red and a blue background, a red and a cyan background, that can give us some really cool effects in person. All right.